This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Linode, high-performance cloud hosting for everyone. Visit linode.com/MacVoices and take $20 off your first server package. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, I don't usually cover IndieGoGo campaigns or anything like that because you never quite know what they are or why they would be important. And a lot of times they're just sort of gadgets. Nothing wrong with gadgets. We love gadgets, but you're never quite sure. But this particular IndieGoGo campaign really caught my attention. Steve Sandy of Apple World Today referred it to me, and I'm kind of excited about having you hear about it. I'm certainly not going to be the one to tell you about it. That duty is going to fall to W.Klambour. He is the evangelist for Zentyal, who is trying to bring a Mac server to, a Linux server to the Mac. Sam, welcome. It's great to have you.
Well, great to be here. Hi, Chuck.
So I got the pronunciation right, Zentyal.
You got that right, yes.
All right,
perfect.
That's good. So I'm going to let you just kind of take us into this because this is an IndieGoGo thing. So it is not something that is shipping. It's not even close to shipping at this point, I wouldn't think. But it's something that I think is sorely needed in the Mac community.
Extremely important in my view. You know, I'm a Mac admin myself, and we need a server on macOS, in particular an all-in-one server. And it should be reliable and it should be affordable because the macOS is a terrific platform for the small and medium-sized businesses. And for them, money counts. So it's important that they get both a reliable server, giving them back control over their data, and at the same time affordable. And this is what the project of the Zentyal Mac server is about.
Okay, so let's touch on that for a second, because running a server, requires some knowledge to do it effectively. And we see a lot of folks, and some of them have been sponsors of MacVoices. They're advertising servers in the clouds and for rent servers and virtual servers. And those definitely have their place. But why do you think that we still need a Mac server that you can sit in the corner of your small business and have control over and have the admin requirements that go along with running a server?
Because we're losing control. I mean, I'm an IT professional, and even I, as an IT professional, I start losing control. Where actually is my data? I have iCloud, then you have Google, then you have some mail accounts, and everything everywhere. And at the end of the day, you don't know exactly where the stuff is. And for companies, especially for smaller companies, I am firmly convinced they need to get back control over their data. And the cloud, the monster clouds, the anonymous clouds, they're well suited maybe for large enterprises, because if something happened, they might have the legal power to defend their rights. For a smaller company, that's simply not possible. Now, we had the problem that the bandwidth and the uplinks to the SMB companies, the small and medium-sized businesses, maybe was not fast enough. But now that fiber is coming to the homes and thus coming to the small and medium-sized businesses as well, there is simply no reason why you could not have your own cloud, your own server. And this is what I think the industry should be heading back. We need to bring back the control and the material to the companies.
You make a compelling argument, especially in the face of data breaches and all of those things, when you can be held accountable for data breaches that are maybe beyond your control. It's notoriously difficult to transfer that risk out to a host and say, okay, if you leak my data, you're the one that's going to handle the credit reports and all of that. That's a real challenge. So there's a lot to be said for having control yourself. And then if you're not keeping up with it, then it's on you. But there's a much better chance that you're going to keep up with it for that very reason.
Yeah. I mean, the majority of small, medium-sized businesses, they don't have their own IT. They have an MSP, usually a local or regional, which they know. Most often, they even know them personally. So they take care of their IT, and they maintain desktop environments, printers, and so on. So it's actually just natural that they maintain the server too. They have the competence, they have the experience, and they should just do it as they maintain the infrastructure of the IT infrastructure of the company on site. I want to give this all back to this personal relationship. We need to get more personal again. And that's what the Zentyal server and the philosophy of the Zentyal server truly delivers.
Okay, so in case it's not obvious, I'm sort of building up here to where we're headed. But right now, the Zentyal server exists on Linux. Is that's the way I understand it? Is that correct?
That's really good news. I'm looking myself into Zentyal from the view of a Mac administrator. Okay, so I'm really taking that standpoint, like if I were outside of the company. So the good news is Zentyal has a really robust Linux-based server, which they developed since 2004. So the server is very mature. It is based on industry standards like postfix, Samba, Dovecot, and so on. So the industry standards which Apple actually themselves used for their Mac OS server. And what Zentyal does is, well, you have these tools, but each of these tools to be configured independently is a mess, takes a lot of time. So you have to bring this together. You have to manage it, you have to orchestrate it and give it a user interface that is as easy as possible, right? That's what people liked with the Mac OS server. It was really easy to configure because it had an intuitive user interface. And I was much surprised, positively surprised, when I first looked into the Zentyal server user interface. I saw immediately that Zentyal pursues the same philosophy which we actually want from the Mac and Mac OS. Ingenious simplicity. This is what it is about. Because the Mac admins working, or in small offices, even the owners, they don't have the time to dive into the terminal like enterprise admins, right? They have a lot of other jobs to do. So it's really important to them that management and configuration of a server is very easy. And this is what Zentyal truly delivers with the Linux version. And the objective now is to bring this mature Zentyal Linux server to the Mac OS platform running natively on Mac OS, because this has a lot of advantages for us, the Mac admins. Why? Just briefly to explain. All our core knowledge we have in the Mac OS. We really know this operating system. We know how to manage it. We know all the ingots, right? So if we can manage and run a server on the platform where we have our core knowledge, that's a great advantage, and that greatly helps us to efficiently run and maintain a server. It's always a hassle if you have to go to a platform where you are not really deeply familiar with it. And that's why I approached Zentyal, telling them we should bring this great server natively to the Mac OS and to the Mac admins.
What was their response? They have a perfectly functioning product now. Do they see the wisdom and the benefits of making this transition?
That's a really good question. And I was surprised how interested Zentyal was from the beginning. Of course, I provided them the information, and they also knew it because some Mac admins already had approached them that Mac or Apple has deprecated the Mac OS server, and that the entire worldwide Mac platform is server orphaned now, at least for an all-in-one server. So this provides a substantial business opportunity, but it's not just about business. It's also that they can do something really helpful, something really great for the thousands of Mac admins who need, in my view, an all-in-one server solution. I am surprised myself, actually, how many Mac OS servers still are running. You would be surprised yourself. Amazing.
Well, like you said, there was no clear path away from that, and listen, at some point, I mean, because I know how it is. I'm this way, and you are too. You know, sometimes if something goes away, you keep using it, you know, even though there may be some detriment to it. You know, the trouble is with server packages, it can be a little dangerous not to have it continually updated because of security issues and all. But more importantly, you start doing upgrades to the operating system, and if something breaks, I mean, now you have a whole different set of problems. So you really need to stay current with both the underlying software and the server software. And unfortunately, Apple really didn't give anyone a path when they deprecated macOS server.
I absolutely agree. When you read through the web page, they linked to the deprecated macOS server. I mean, these are complicated open source tools, which an average Mac admin, not to speak of a small office, never could handle, you know. And I mean, that's, how should I put it? We need to change this. We need to address this. I am firmly convinced, you know, because macOS is a great platform for small and medium-sized businesses. Apple is doing very well on the security side and maintaining the macOS core system. So it simply can't be that such an instrumental and major platform is without a single Mac all-in-one server. And maybe Apple was just not the right company to do it. And I give you an example. I mean, FileMaker is doing very well. And I think for more than 20 years now, still have the same CEO, by the way, a French guy. So why is FileMaker doing a great job? Because they're a small company and they can really focus on one core product. And this is what FileMaker does, right? And it was probably a very wise idea, the best idea as for FileMaker, that Apple kept it as an independent company. And because it's Apple owned, actually, it's 100% Apple owned, but it's an independent company for more than 20 years now. And I think exactly the same holds true with Zentyal. Zentyal is a small company too, so we can really focus on one product and do a very good job there. There are other examples, and I really want to mention them because they are doing a terrific job too. Rumpus FTP server. Have a look at Rumpus FTP server. Small company, really doing a great job with their solution. Or take Mike Bombich with Carbon Copy Cloner. Terrific backup solution. So I guess for such kind of software tools, it might be better suited if it is handled by a small company and not a large enterprise with a huge product portfolio, right? And maybe this was the reason why the macOS server over so many years was ill-fated. And now with Zentyal, I think we're really on the right path. This is going to work, and the company has demonstrated for the past 15 years that they are reliable, that they are sticking like FileMaker to their core philosophy, and that they are able to deliver the solution to the customers, the small and medium-sized customers who deserve a focus. We have too many companies focusing either on consumers or on enterprise, right? But tailor-made software, tailor-made servers for small and medium-sized businesses, and SMB, the SMB vertical actually is the largest business vertical in the world. Millions, I think some 30 million companies around the globe. So it's a huge vertical. And I strongly believe that they deserve to have a tailor-made solution for them.
Today's edition of MacVoices is brought to you by Linode. You can build it on Linode. Here are the facts about Linode. Linode is a virtual cloud server service that lets you build the server you need in the cloud. And not just any server, but a server that suits your specific needs. From a $5 per month Nanode plan, the whole way up to a full-blown, dedicated, custom server with native SSD storage, a 40 gigabit network, and an industry-leading processor. Get up and running in a matter of minutes, not hours or days. Pick a plan, pick a distro, pick a location. That's it. Your server is online. Speaking of location, Linode has 10 worldwide data centers, including the newest in Toronto and one opening soon in Mumbai. So if geography is an issue for you, it isn't an issue with Linode. Linode also comes with a ton of one-click installs for things like WordPress, VPN servers, Minecraft servers, and many more. So getting up and running with a specific type of server is quick and easy. Need multiple servers? Not only can Linode handle that for you, but their easy-to-use dashboard makes management easy, just as easy as their monitoring and backing up of your server. And of course, service is always an issue. Linode has 24/7 customer support that is always just a phone call away. Now you know the facts about Linode. Okay, maybe not all the facts, but that should get you started. Visit linode.com/macvoices to round out your knowledge, and while you're there, use the code MacVoices to get $20 credit on your first Linode server. That's $20 credit at linode.com/macvoices, and a big thanks to Linode for their support of MacVoices. Sam, let's shift gears just for a minute, and I don't expect us to get into the ones and zeros because then we'll all go to sleep. But describe the process, if you will, in general terms of porting this from Linux over to macOS. I mean, is it a complete rewrite, or is it just a change of certain parts of the code? How does that work?
Thanks to the open standards like Dovecot, Samba, Postfix, etc., these industry tools are already available on macOS. Secondly, macOS is Unix-based. So it's very close to Linux. And these two things together make a bringing over to macOS a lot easier. this contributes, because you don't have to write things from scratch. You basically can take the existing server and adapt it to the, let's say, Unix flavor of macOS. I also think it makes sense that these days you have a browser-based user interface. So you don't need a dedicated application. If you look at VMware, ESXi, for instance, I mean, they really have very convenient user interfaces through the web browser. So you actually can maintain one user interface, which again eases a lot to bring over a Linux-based system, a Linux-based server solution to macOS. So I would have expected it to be much more expensive myself. But the Zentyal team has a lot of experience after 15 years, so they know what it requires. And from the campaign, what is required for funding, that's surprising, actually, that you can manage it with 100K.
Right. So before we get to the campaign, can you show us a little bit, at least, of part of the interface that's been completed as part of this project? I think it would help folks to get an appreciation maybe for what we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to share my desktop, and I'm going to show you the user interface. So again, I'm looking always with the eyes of a Mac admin, coming from Mac OS and coming from macOS server and other servers which are native available on Mac OS, like Curio, for instance, too. And when I look with these eyes, I instantly see, does it look familiar to me? Can I identify with the user interface? Or is it something that looks completely apart from what we are used on Mac OS? I was surprised. I was really surprised because usually when you think Linux, you think things are sophisticated. Plethora of justifications, adjustments, plethora of things you can configure, overwhelming. That's the notion which we from the Mac side have with Linux. And as for Zentyal, the philosophy is completely different. They precisely pursue the idea of ingenious simplicity. So here we have the dashboard. See an overview of what is running. Let's go, for instance, to the users. Very simple. Here you can just add a user. And you give it a name. Sorry. Sorry. So my typo.
Looks like me trying to enter passwords.
Well, I take another one here. Good. That's it. And you know, it's notable. This is not a user interface for 1,000 users, right?
Good point.
Right? It's not. But this is not the idea of this server, right? This is an idea. This is a server for small and medium-sized businesses. So you usually will have here everything between, what should we say, 5 or 50, sometimes maybe 100, exceptionally maybe 250. But the large majority will be between 5 and 50. And this is exactly the user interface tailor-made for such kind of companies, right? That's what I liked, because I realized the user interface already shows you what the target audience, what the target customers are. So you feel familiar as a small and medium-sized business because you see, oh yeah, that's done. That's really done for me, for my needs. Domain. That's how you create the domain. This is how we are used to do it how we were used to do it on macOS server, right? An open directory controller pretty much has also just some 3 or 4 items which you have to enter. I mean, I was doing this on a Windows server. I'm also looking into Windows servers, and I think Microsoft is doing a terrific job for enterprises. So I'm nothing to say against the Windows server, but it's for enterprise servers. It's so sophisticated. You have so many things you can adjust, you can configure. It's overwhelming. We don't want this, and we don't need this in the small and medium-sized business environment. First time I actually liked Active Directory, because if as a Mac user or a Mac admin you hear about Active Directory, that sounds like very sophisticated, lots of problems, right? And then you come to this user interface and you see, well, you can actually do a directory controller exactly the way Apple was doing it with the macOS server Open Directory controller. Same for file sharing. You add shares. Chuck, I don't know, do you remember macOS Classic?
Sure.
It was a super great OS, macOS Classic 9 or 8. And you know, at those days, you had a really nice feature. When you trashed something on a file share, it would not disappear instantly, but actually go to a recycle bin, to a trash on the server, right? I really like this feature, and I never understood why Apple actually didn't bring this over to OS X or these days Mac OS. Now here, I learned that it is indeed possible to include a trash, or as they call it, recycle bin on a server share. That's possible, they do it, and you can use it even on Mac OS. Very nice feature. Mail. General. Few things to configure. Virtual domains. You can just add virtual domains. You have a lot less possibilities to configure when you compare it with Curio. And I consider Curio to be a really good mail server. Nothing against Curio. They do a very decent job also on the macOS side, clearly. But when you compare it, surprising, lean, and focused. If you want to add a mail address for a user, that's how you do it. That's all you do. You can also have as many mail aliases as you want. You can add them here. You could even have an external retrieval account. Very lean, very lean. DNS. Firewall. I don't like that much firewalls because they're always sophisticated. Tons of possibilities to configure. Very lean. We just add a new service, say like, should we take Samba? Voila. Then you hit save changes. So, Chuck, you might now start to understand why I was so pleased with this server coming from macOS.
I very much can, Sam. It makes me feel like even I could maybe run a server with that much power because it is very approachable. And yeah, there are a few acronyms in there that I'm not deadly familiar with, but I get the impression that, okay, I'd have to do a little research, but it is something that maybe I could set up for a small business and maintain for a small business. And I can understand why you were so impressed with it, and because it does seem about as Mac-like as you can get.
Yes, indeed. And that's why I am so convinced that this needs to be brought to Mac OS, because the server is really Mac OS-like. And you mentioned something really important, Chuck. The server is well suited even for small offices. They can configure and run most of the server on their own. And that's really helpful for them, because small offices, they have really limited budget, so they might not be able to afford an MSP, right? And if you can give them a decent Mac Mini with a decent storage, let's say Promise Pegasus, for instance, they will just have a great server.
Yep. Probably a lot more server than most small businesses need. And that's not a bad statement. I mean, it's always better to have a little room to grow on the way up, because if trying to migrate servers and do that, that's not what you want to do. You want to buy something that you can grow into and expand your business. And then when you hit that certain point that it's time to move up to a bigger server, that's fine, because then you probably have the resources and the genuine need for it. But for small to mid-size, this looks absolutely appropriate.
Yes, and you know, we all thought, well, I was very conservative about this from the beginning, but let's take it straight. We all thought that things are getting easier when we can migrate things to clouds. You get rid of all the stuff, you have nothing to do yourself, it's all fantastically done on the cloud. If you look at the clouds today, I really can't believe it, you know. Constant changes from marketing, constant authentication changes, contract changes, subscription changes. Once you've gotten familiar with some cloud system, you can bet marketing is going to change it again.
Yeah, you make a great point, and I want to take nothing away, because some of these cloud services are phenomenal, and the support is phenomenal. But I'm also quick to tell you that I've dealt with some cloud services when I needed support and needed service. And unfortunately, usually if you're calling someone about that kind of support, you need it right away. and they really didn't rise to the occasion. And there would be a definite feeling of security that if my server is sitting over there in that corner and I'm administrating it, that I've got instant access to whatever, as opposed to trying to wait on hold for somebody to answer the phone, or wait for an email response, or even wait on a chatbot to pop up and at least start to guide me through the process. So yeah.
We've got to rethink this. Yeah.
Sam, so let's talk about the IndieGoGo campaign. What all is there? How folks can contribute to it, and what they get for their support.
We decided to start with this campaign. The perks you get, we wanted to have perks that are usable from day one. What you get is, well, you can make just a donation of some $50. You get the entire manual, the printed manual from Zentyal. I really use it myself frequently. So the manual is good and it helps, and I really learn about the ingots of the server myself constantly. So it's a usable manual. So you can just make a donation with the manual, which helps a lot already, or you can get a real functional license for the existing Linux version, and you will be entitled that, or I have to put it like this, the license you get, the Linux license you get, will be entitled for the macServer version of the Zentyal server. So once it is released, you can straightforward migrate it to the macOS server version. I was much pleased when I looked into prices of Zentyal. I mean, a 25 user license for $199, that's really affordable. That's really affordable, you know. I mean, I was used much different from other servers. So it's not just the product that it requires quite some courage, you know, to do this kind of pricing, because there are other Linux-based servers, but they are all going into enterprise, because they say, well, you cannot make enough money with the SMBs. That's always the excuse they bring. You cannot make enough money with the SMBs. And that is simply not true, I am convinced. And Zentyal impressively demonstrates that you can do a very fair pricing and at the same time a reasonable existing. So what you get for 25 for $199 is a 25 user full server license. So there are no restrictions, and you can already run. I'm doing it myself. So this is all. I'm never talking just about theory. I'm really doing all these things myself as a Mac admin. So what you can do is you can take the server, you can create a VM with VirtualBox that is free. But I also figured out now a smooth way to do it with VMware Fusion, because most of us on the Mac side maybe are a bit more familiar with with VMware Fusion than with VirtualBox. And then you can run the server in the in the VM with Fusion, much the way you are used maybe to already occasionally run some special software with Windows VMs, right? So we have a full functional server, Linux server, but running on Mac OS with VirtualBox or with VMware Fusion. And you can already start using it productively, because the server is extremely mature on the Linux side. So there is no experimental thing. And that boils down to the fact that the perks people can get in the crowdfunding campaign are already real working products.
And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on, because so many of these products, Kickstarter, IndieGoGo, GoFundMe, whatever, there's a certain amount of faith that you have to put in. And for better or worse, unfortunately, it just seems that a lot of these projects don't deliver on time. Some never deliver. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things that attracted me to this one, that, okay, I'm backing it, and I will get something during my backing period. I mean, let's just pretend that, something major happens and it never gets ported over to the Mac. I've still bought working licenses, and from what you've shown today, I mean, it's a phenomenal server. And so this is one where you are getting something right out of the box for your an IndieGoGo support that you can start to use tomorrow, essentially. You can start to use right away. You don't have to wait a month, a week, 6 weeks, 6 months, a year, whatever, for the project to be completed. You're up and running right away, and then you'll be migrating over once the project gets completed. And that's not something that a lot of folks do. And I think that a lot of them could learn something from this, that there's an instant reward. And then further down the road, there's the delivery on the product that you're supporting.
Absolutely. The idea is also that we, the Mac admins, can get familiar with the configuration, the user interface of the server, and so on, so that once the Mac server version ships, we are already much familiar with the management of the server, and that eases things a lot, because if you have to wait for a new server, and once it is released, you again will need some 3 to 6 months until to really get familiar with. It's always a bit a hassle, I would say, right? But if it goes the other way around, that you can already start working with the server, getting familiar with all the things, because we are not going to change things for the Mac server. The UI and all will be kept the same. That's the idea. And for Mac admins working in SMB environments, as we said before, they have a lot of other tasks, so they cannot exclusively just work for a server. And it helps a lot to them if whatever time they invest is beneficial to them. And I think with this concept of the mature existing Zentyal server, Linux-based, we can really match these needs. And I'm doing it myself too. Again, I have migrated, or I had for a long time a Curio mail server. Again, nothing about the Curio mail server. Great folks, great software. But I have now migrated my mail services to the Zentyal server exactly in order to get familiar with the server and to work with it on a daily basis. And I learned myself that this helps a lot, because if you're doing things repeatedly, tasks like creating users, like creating mail addresses for the user, and the aliases we have seen before in the screen sharing, these are all the things which require some routine. And I have the chance to already gather this routine before the Mac server is being released.
So at this point, I want to make sure that folks know I will have links to the IndieGoGo campaign on the website, and in the show notes on the MacVoices website, so you can go there, or of course just go to IndieGoGo and search for this product. Sam, what's the website for the server itself, the server company, so that folks can go there if they're interested in the Linux version, or if they're just interested in linking from there to the IndieGoGo campaign?
That's simply Zentyal.com.
Great. Sam, thank you. Thank you so much for the tour. It really is interesting. I think it's something that not every member of my audience is familiar with, and so hopefully we've educated some people. And folks, if you are a Mac admin, please go check this out. If you know a Mac admin, go check this out. But share this information, get it out there, because right now, as Sam said, we don't have a server on macOS, at least not one that is this powerful and this simple to use. And it really is something that will benefit the whole platform. Sam, did I miss anything?
Covered all.
All right, that sounds good. Thank you so much, and thank you for staying up late. We probably should tell folks now that you're a little bit east of me. I'm in I'm in Pennsylvania, and where are you?
I'm in Zurich, so I am 6 hours ahead of you guys in the East Coast. So my time would be 11:30 p.m.
Well, I really appreciate you staying up. Sleep late tomorrow, okay?
More than glad, more than glad. I can do something for the Mac admins. I am glad, and I am willed to do this. This is my philosophy. This is my IT dedication. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate it, and we will be watching, and best of luck with the IndieGoGo campaign.
Thank you, Chuck.
Folks, this is Mac Voices. I'm Chuck Joyner. I encourage you, even if it's just for your own edification, to go check this out. Do a little research. You may not have a server. You may not need a server, but it's something that will benefit the platform, as I said, overall. And that's something that benefits us all. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit macvoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/macvoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.